Got it. All right, and we're live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michaels. I'm glad you're here. We've got a great show lined up tonight. Tonight on the show, we have you. Oh, this is a show for you. We're going to talk about all things flying. Mostly tonight, we're going to focus on thermal flying, free flying stuff. So if you're here to talk about paramotoring, you probably have to wait until the second half on that. But nonetheless, you're going to learn something. Every week, we talk about things that are important to making you a safer pilot, a better pilot, and who knows, you might learn something that will save your life. Somewhere down the road, maybe you're thinking, I want to help out, I want to support the show. Go to Patreon. There's a link in the description. You can support the show. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can do something. This is like good juju. You support the flying community, good things happen to you, and you become a better pilot. And just saying, keep the show going. And we appreciate everybody that's been supporting the show. We have a few sponsors. I want to mention one of those is PPG Smoke. PPGsmoke.com is the website. You'll find all kinds of great things from strobe lights, lamels, chase cams, floats. They've got the Unity headset. Version 2 should be ready to come out any day. We've got smoke machines, all kinds of good stuff. PPGsmoke.com is the website. Also want to mention a couple of new sponsors. One of those is DreamLifterParamotors.com. And that is a school that's here in Southern California that Harley Milne started. Great organization and just a great guy. You can see some of his shows. He's been on the show a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And just has a great heart and is a really good teacher, very patient. You can tell he's going to do a great job. If you want to sign up with him, again, his website is www.dreamlifterparamotors.com. Also want to mention, in case you mess up one of your gliders or you need to get your trim checked or porosity checked, maybe you want to do an SIV, go check out https paraglider-inspection.myspotify.com. There'll also be a link in the description. I think Anthony's dropping those in the chat as we speak. Go check that out. That is one of our sponsors. Really appreciate it. That's Andrew Fuller's setup. And in the last year, he spent some serious training. He's got all kinds of sewing machines and all kinds of things to fix gliders. And he really knows what he's talking about. He's got a great thing going. So get signed up with him if you need some help with your glider stuff. Also want to mention paramotorprops.com. Paramotor Props, if you're looking for a great deal on props, you can go to their website. Really awesome experience that I had with them. Blew up a prop, ordered it while I was sitting there moping about not being able to fly. And within, I think it was like 2 days, I had already instantly got a shipping label. Within like a half an hour, I had a shipping tracking number, and then it was shipped and I was happy. Also want to mention American Allied Drains and Plumbing. If you're in the San Diego area, you can call them at 844-777-9055. If you call them and mention Paragliding Talk, you'll get 10% off of whatever plumbing services. And that'll be a great benefit. So use them, use these sponsors. If you want to sponsor the show, reach out to me on the website, paraglidingtalk.com/sponsorship, and we'll get you all set up. Thank you. In moderation, John Ripa's with us, Sean Nafsker, and Anthony Peregringo. They're going to be handling questions as they pop in. Right after the show, we do a after show. If you want to join that, there'll be a link at the end of the show that you can join. And so we'd love to see you in the after show as well. Tonight, I want to talk about things that I'm very passionate about and excited about. We have done episodes in the past where we've talked about some of these things, but we're going to take a deep dive talking about thermaling tonight. We're also going to talk about some logistics and how you can maybe become better at low saves. We'll talk about what a low save is, and so we'll get you some understanding. We're also going to talk about lee side flying tonight. Lee side flying is probably one of the most dangerous things that you're going to do in the sport when it comes to cross country flying. So we'll talk about a little bit about some of the logistics cross country flying, and then we'll talk about what I use for weather prediction and how to become better at choosing the day. Obviously, we're kind of a sport where it demands good weather every time. Ripo's talking about maybe doing a trip out to San Diego. And so that's going to involve, especially about a week or two before, checking the weather and trying to predict what's going to happen. And so how can we be successful before we choose to make a trip somewhere? What's a good time? What's a good season? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's open up by talking about thermals. And let's go very basic. What is a thermal? Where are you going to find thermals, right? What are you seeing when it comes to predicting where a thermal might be? How can you know? So I'm going to give you kind of a rundown what happens typically when we're flying, our local flying site, free flying. We get our gear out. We're sticking our finger in the air. We have some guys, they're putting out a measuring device to measure what's the wind speed like. And let's just say, for the sake of the conversation, this day, not much wind at all. And so when you come out, you're going to check, you're going to look for a few things. Let me ask you guys, what do you think? What are the things that you're looking for when you're about to launch? So Rip, you've got some limited experience with free flying. You've got some good cross country in Colombia. Did you go to Colombia last season?
I like to look for the house thermals when I'm just getting to the launch site. I like to talk to the locals and see, what's going on. Where might I catch something?
Yeah, that's smart right there, for sure. When we talk about house thermals, what are we talking about? Well, typically you'll have what we call a trigger. Something has to trigger the thermal. So if you have a big old flat piece of ground, let's just, for example, use Nebraska's cornfield. So Josh is out there and he's rustling the bushes, the corn stalks. Well, what happens in the where that corn stalk meets maybe a different color? If you've got yellow corn stalk here and it butts up against maybe some sod or a sod farm, and you have that green, the yellow, there's going to be a temperature difference, and any kind of movement of air crossing over that line that divides the two, that's going to be considered a trigger. And so thermal triggers are, you can look for them from the air. And so wherever and especially when you're in the moment, you're free flying, you're trying to get to the place where you're going to make your next move. You caught your first thermal, and let's just say that was your house thermal, and it might be a little bump, a little hill at Blossom. We call it thumper. And the reason why I think this trigger happens is you have the main launch, and then down below you have this little hill, and the backside of that hill is in the shade. So you've got heating happening on the front, and as soon as it meets the top, now you're in a different color, right? So now you got a different temperature, and because you have differential on the temperatures, now you have an availability. So let's even break down thermals farther. A thermal is just a difference in temperature. So something that is getting heated on the ground is going to be releasing a certain amount of energy. So energy has to go somewhere. How many of you guys have ever made hot air balloons with the birthday candles? If you went to the flying circus, they make these, I think they call them like lanterns, flying lanterns or balloon lanterns or something like that. And you can do that on the desert. Don't dare do that anywhere where you could start a fire, because it will go wrong fast. But how is it that those things work? Well, you might have 4 or 5 candles, and then you have a bag and you have a couple sticks in the middle, and you light the candles. And what happens is you have this differential. You have this temperature now that is getting trapped inside the bag. And because the outside air is less filled with energy, and the energy that's being built up and growing inside of this, now it causes the bag to lift. And actually, the more energy that's inside the bag, the faster that it's going to lift, right? And the only thing that's going to resist that is maybe wind and density, and depending on what you're dealing with on humidity. Okay, so all of those factors are going to play into what's happening with your thermals when you're flying. It's just sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller. You might get thermals on flatland. You might have thermals that are triggering off the side of a hill. Most of the time, when you're thinking about free flying, you're not thinking about flatland flying. But I want to tell you something. Some of the funnest flying is flatland flying because it doesn't seem like it makes sense. And I haven't mastered it, but I know that when it comes to finding thermals, there are ways that you can predict where the thermals are going to be. Okay, so we talked about triggers. There's this old school pilot that he's like a cross country master. I can't remember his name, but if you go to Cloud-Based Mayhem, some of the original stuff that he was posting maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he was interviewing a guy that would when he would get low, there was a place where he would, I guess it was said that he spooked some cattle on purpose to get them to move the air and cause a thermal to trigger. And so, when I heard the story, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds unreasonable. But now that I've seen what I've seen, and now that I know what I know, I believe it's possible, because all that needs to happen is a very small amount of change with the air. If a little bit of air moves, it causes kind of like a reverse snowball effect, where now your energy that's being stored up maybe in some rocks or some dirt, all of a sudden now gets released. And as it releases, it gains momentum, more energy is introduced, air is moving around more and more around it, and now this giant thing starts to lift off. This is a free flying, this is what you long for. You want to find thermals that's going to be, either you're going to have a great long day of flying because you know how to catch thermals, or you're going to have a very short, frustrating hike back up to the car. And if you parked on top, it's going to be a long hike up. Well, what causes these phenomenons? So there's a few things. Obviously, we've talked about lapse rate before. Lapse rate is the difference of temperature at altitude. So that means that if down low you're 100 degrees and at the top of lift 1,000 feet, it's only 80 degrees. You've got this 20 degrees difference at 1,000 feet. You're going to have a really strong lift. You're going to have thermals that are just going to yank you into the sky. If you have little lapse rate, which is the difference in temperature, if you have a very little delta at altitude, then your thermals are going to be lighter, wider, and probably less often and less predictable. So tell me, I'll just ask this pop quiz question. What marks the top of thermals? You guys, any ideas? How can you tell? How can you know how high? You ever been in a thermal and you're like, is this thing ever going to stop?
Is it white?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes, not all the time. Yeah, they're one of the main ways to tell the top of a thermal is clouds, right? Why is it, and what makes a cloud? Well, if you do a little research on what makes clouds, why clouds are, because I became absolutely obsessed with weather after I started flying. Clouds are formed where temperature meets dew point, right? So when you're predicting your flying, and we're going to talk about weather in probably the second half. When you're predicting what's going to happen, you're going to look at your lapse rate, and then you're going to look at that temperature band. So there's a few things. If you're taking notes, the skew T. I'll put that in the chat. Actually, skew T is a great way to. It's a great way to tell what's happening, and it's just a chart showing altitude on the side, and then it will show you your temperature, and then it'll have a little graph at altitude, and then it'll have your dew point, and it'll follow. And wherever you see the graph go together, usually you'll have temperature over here, dew point over here, and they'll meet somewhere, and say 1,000 feet on the graph. All of a sudden now your you're finding that that's clouds. Well, if there's not enough humidity in the air, if there's not enough saturation, or is it saturation? If there's not enough moisture in the air, you may not see the clouds, but you can find the top of lift. There's a few different ways. So it might be that if you're not having clouds, it's because you have a stable day, right? Stability is kind of the killer. So when you have an unstable day, that means you're going to have a lot of action in the air. You're going to have thermals. There's going to be big bubbles. They might be lasting thermals that last for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. That's what you really want, right? You don't want a thermal that's just a bubble. That's such a frustrating flying day. When I launch out and I see a guy, oh, he's in a thermal and and I'm like, oh yeah. And I fly over there and I'm like, yeah. And I get right underneath the guy where he just was. And I know I was right there. I missed it. And he's in the bubble and I'm underneath going down. Like, what the heck happened? There are situations where the thermals will just kind of burp off of the ground and it's a big bubble and it just makes its way up. Nothing's going on underneath it. But guess what's going to happen? Mark my words, that bubble is going to pop again and there's going to be another one. So you can, and I kind of want to segue into making the low save. This is one of the tips that I have. And this is something you put this in your pocket later on for free flying. There's going to be, just like the house thermal is always going to produce something. Those bubbles, listen, if you see a bird going up, don't give up just because when you flew into that area, nothing happened when you were there. It might have been a bubble. You can find thermals a lot of times by just paying close attention. Rip probably had the best answer. You ask the locals first. Where are the best? Where's the house thermal? Where's the best places to get lift? That's a simple one, right? Because they've already done the homework. But if you don't have that convenience because you're on a cross-country flight, you've got to get creative. You're going to have to think. You're going to have to really strategize. And the more aware you are, so we talk about active flying. Obviously, you need to be active in your piloting, but active flying also involves prediction. What is it that's going to be my next goal? What place am I heading to next that I know that that's going to give me an elevator ride to the top of lift so that I can keep going? So low saves are interesting. And what makes someone a good pilot, in my opinion, is someone who can eke out a low save time and time again. Low saves are, the definition, in my opinion, is that you were setting up probably to land and you found something. And it's like, oh, there's a thermal right there. And you work it out. Go back and watch some of my previous shows or videos that I posted, and just maybe do a Robert Michaels low save search. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm down. I'm thinking I'm done. And all of a sudden this magic air just pops up and I'm on the way up. So when you get down to that kind of last ditch effort, it's very nerve-wracking for multiple reasons. One, maybe you took the day off and you're like, man, I really wanted to fly today. And now you're going to have to hike back up, maybe relaunch. But catching a low save is more than just, I found some lift maybe by accident. It does happen, but it's more than that. It's knowing how to fly your glider absolutely perfectly and most efficiently so that you can use whatever is available to get up and get out. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, how are you on your brakes? How are you on your turns? What type of glider do you have? What is your glide ratio with that particular glider? Is it a C glider? Is it a D glider? What type of setup do you have? Are you savvy with how far you should be leaning, how much brake pressure inside, how tight the thermal is? There's a lot of variables. So a good pilot will know all of those things and utilize every tool that he has in his tool bag, although most of those are invisible. So let's maybe talk about some of those tools. So obviously, knowing birds, okay, paying attention to the birds. They have these birds where I fly called swifts. And if you know anything about swifts, they're probably my favorite bird of all birds. And I love bald eagles and falcons and all the peregrine. But when it comes to the swifts, they are mind-boggling. They say that swifts will many of times fly for months at a time. Do a little research on swifts; you'll be fascinated. I actually have this little low key, I don't want to say viral video, but it just keeps on getting pings. And I just talked about swifts, and the bird people are watching that video on YouTube, and they keep commenting. They don't know anything about paragliding, but I was just talking about swifts. So that swifts will pack their mouths with spiders while they're flying. They eat while they're flying. They even sleep in flight. If you can wrap your mind around that. They'll stay up in altitudes that you can't, as a human, you wouldn't be able to survive up there. They must need as much oxygen as we need to function. They will go on glide for hours, and that's when they'll sleep. They'll breed in the air, and the only reason why they will come and nest is to hatch for reproduction. They'll lay eggs and do stuff. But I was thinking when I was doing the research, like, how is it that they're eating these spiders? Like, they spend most of their time flying super high. Well, it makes sense because, like, you ever seen a baby nest of spiders hatch and they end up in a web, and it looks like pepper on a web, and it's just a bunch of little baby spiders. Well, that a thermal will catch that web, break it off, and then carry it into the sky. And I'll tell you, some of my best flights, I've looked up, and especially when I flew a few different times at Lake Elsinore, we flew to Saboba. By the time I got to Saboba, I looked up, and my glider was littered with spider webs, just littered. I mean, their stuff's just flapping in the wind, spider webs. And so, anyways, the swifts will eat that. And so if you see a ball of swifts flying around, get ready. There's going to be some action. There's going to be some lift there. Now, why is that? Well, the bugs are getting pulled up in these thermals, and the swifts are eating the bugs. And they also like to play in the thermals. And so some of my favorite flights at Blossom are when the swifts are out and they're kind of showing, and it's amazing to me because they will model the full thermal, what it looks like. It might be a bubble, it might be a thermal that's just constant, and they'll just be chilling inside of that and mark the perfect circle. And you fly right in it, you feel it. It's like you can't see it, but as soon as you fly in, it's like, yep, it makes sense. So low saves you can be helped by just paying. That's a tool to pay attention what's flying around you. It might be crows. For whatever reason, I don't trust crows. And part of that is because crows will play in a thermal and then they'll just leave for no reason. They don't care. It makes no sense to me. Like peregrine, they're going to be in there. They're going to be soaring. They'll stay right. They'll avoid the core. They'll chill on the outside of the thermal, and they'll mark perfectly the thermal most times. Swifts, they're all going to be in and out, and they're going to mark the thermal. Crows will fly right in, boost up, and then just decide, I'm leaving. And they might have a couple friends in there still, and they'll just dive bomb, even in the middle of the thermal. They'll dive bomb into the thermal. And it wouldn't make sense why you would want to do that, but he will. Great question from Kevin Fly. He wanted to ask about lee side thermals. So great question about lee side, and I have that actually on my little list here. So bugs and thermals, birds. Before you launch, Mom donated $5 to Super Chat. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate that. When you talk about what to look for in the air, there's going to be a couple things. Obviously, I'm always looking for some different textures on the ground, different colors and different textures. So if there's a whole row of bushes, there's a good chance that something's going to be popping from there. Big fields that are different colors are going to produce thermals. You're looking for, while you're on the ground before you launch, pay attention to the birds. Look to see. One of the things that will really encourage someone, because you'll show up to the site and there won't be any birds. And it's like, man, did I pick a bad day to fly? What happened? And you'll be looking and hoping. And what'll happen every once in a while, you'll find a bird and we'll go, oh, bird off a launch. And everyone will stop and everyone will look and pay attention to that bird to see how quickly it's going up, how tight the thermal is, where that thermal is. Look down where the trigger might be before you launch. And so you're thinking in your head, remember, a thermal was produced in that area. I'm going to launch to that area. No reason to redesign the wheel, right? John Wayne donated $10 super chat. Thanks, John Wayne. Appreciate that, man. So, knowing where these thermals are going to trigger. So let's we'll talk about the lee side flying. Maybe let's pick that apart a little bit. What is the lee side? So if you've got a mountain, and I should make like a Lego mountain or something for these illustrations. If your wind direction is coming from this way, so picture the arrow, and I've got wind coming up, and this is my mountain. Wind is coming up, and it's doing this, and the thermals are being produced. And as it's going up, it's going to lean back with the wind direction, right? Oh, Walter donated $5 to super chat. Thanks, Walter. As this thermal is being created, there's something else that's happening on the backside of the mountain. You're having things kind of get. It's an interesting thing because you've got some of this stuff on the top, maybe getting pushed down over the back. We call that rotor. And it's going to last a little bit. They say that depending on the wind speed, you could see rotor off of an object up to 6 times the size. So if you picture the mountains, if you're just doing a quick measurement by looking 6 times, I think we talked about another one of the shows that we did. So go back. I think I was using some drawings of different things. But lee side thermals are fascinating because they're kind of unadulterated. They're back in this area that's not touched too much. You're in the wind shadow. So why is it there's like a stigma attached to lee side flying? Oh man, you better be an expert if you're going to lee side fly. You better be really good at, collapse recovery, and you better be on your A game if you're going to fly lee side. And all of those things are true. And why is it? What is it that makes lee side flying dangerous? So on the backside of that hill, you have some different variables that are happening. You've got this wind that's doing this, and then you might have some spirals coming off the back. And then you might also have a thermal driving you up into that, if you will. Basically, that's going to be pointing straight up until it gets to the back of the mountain. Oh, Tori Pope donated $20 to the super chat. Thanks, Tori. He's got one of the greatest beards. I hope you still got it, Tori.
Nice.
I didn't get to see you at the Salton Sea or the Flying Circus, but next year I'll be there, man.
Yeah, there were 4 lookalikes there.
Really?
Around the LZ, yeah. Look like Tori. Gray beard, hat. That's it. Anyway.
Yep. And it's interesting that when you get into the position where you're kind of forced into a lee side flying condition, just know you put yourself there, right? You don't have to fly lee side. But there are different situations. If you watch the Red Bull X Alps, which by the way is this year, I think it starts in June, maybe. I don't know the exact dates. It's worth looking. Red Rocks. The Red Bull X Alps. You go check it out. If you want to be highly entertained, it is, in my opinion, the coolest sport that is out there. Red Bull sponsors, a really big deal in Europe. But there are situations where these guys end up lee side. Now, you obviously need to really think about your decision to fly lee side. If the winds are strong, stay away from it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Especially don't try to launch into lee side. Now, there have been a few different situations where we have launched lee side, but it was when there was no wind at all. I mean, I'm talking like nothing. We were doing forward launches and the wing would barely come up because it was just a touch of a tailwind. And so lee side flying is literally for experts. Let's stop right here and spin the wheel. We're
Yes.
31 minutes. Yeah.
Yes. No more names in the wheel. I know it's on delay
No more
because of
names.
YouTube. So just an FYI for all those other shows, YouTube has a delay on when we do wheels and things. So it might take a couple minutes before people actually see that you're about to do it. Just giving a
Funny
heads up.
because while you're talking about lagging, my computer's lagging.
Yeah,
My internet
yeah,
is lagging.
It's like the lee side of a mountain, you know. It's-
Yeah,
turbulent.
that's right.
Okay. And here we go. Ready?
Yes, sir. Oh, by the way, tonight what we're going to be giving away is it's a little carrier that Ray Pierce made, and it's a little tiny holder for your micro SD cards, and also it's a little deal that mounts to your throttle cable or throttle for putting a mirror. The spin of this wheel is brought to you by Calamity Kite Clinic. CalamityKiteClinic.com is the website. Go sign up with them. If you want to get better at ground handling, reach out to Sean at the next fly and he'll help you and get you all taught up and how to ground handle and be a master of your wing on the ground. If you're a master on the ground, you're going to be a master in the air. Also, the spin of this wheel is brought to you by Nebraska PPG. Josh Bowden runs a school in Nebraska. And if you're interested in getting some top-notch training, reach out to him through the link in the description today. Didn't you win last week,
No way.
Gringo?
Yes.
Ooh. Oh my
Congratulations,
Come
Anthony
on.
Paragringo. This has got to be
Gringo.
rigged. I'm just saying.
Did you,
Even
Who made
Gringo,
this
did-
wheel?
Gringo,
I
did you already get one of these?
No, one of what? No.
One of the deals, one of the little pucks,
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
mirror.
I'm good. Spin it again.
the
spin it
3D
again.
printed one.
spend it again.
Okay.
Okay,
Spin it again.
I'll spend it again. Thank you for that contribution back into the show, there, Anthony Paragringo. You're an excellent moderator. I'm very proud of you. I hope to someday be as great as you are. Ready?
Winner, chicken dinner.
Okay, ready?
By the
And
way, I'm
off
going to
we
be
go.
late tomorrow. I'm going to be late to work. I'm just letting you know. There you go.
You arrive after me every day, so you're always late.
Oh,
No, tomorrow I'm going to be really late. Yeah. By the way, the spin of this wheel is brought to you by Lone Star Paramotor. If you're in the Lone Star state of Texas, you can reach out to Ron Turan and his team for world-class training. LoneStarParamotor.com. Yeah, my internet is super slow. Well, they didn't say it was going to be slow, but it is. I can't even
looks
names.
like Mac Acro. Max
Blank.
I don't think so.
No,
Still
I
on.
know my wheel pretty good, and I mean I got a
that thing
squeaky,
is
but
grease. Nick.
oh yeah.
Blank. Congratulations, blank. Nick Webster.
Congratulations, Nick Webster.
Sweet.
Yay. Congratulations, Nick Webster. Reach out to me on paraglidingtalk.com/contact. I'll get your stuff sent out right away. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate everybody that's been supporting the show. Okay, let's continue our conversation about lee side flying. So lee side flying, obviously, if you're a beginner, not even on the table. So just go talk to your instructor about that. And yeah, it's an important thing to think about if it's worth it. we have this risk to reward thing that we deal with constantly. Hot Butter Steve Productions donated $10 to Super Chat. He said, Robert, alligators going to live up to 50 years. By my calculations, this significantly increases the chances that they will, in fact, see you later. That's pretty intense. Did they really? 50 years? I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like alligators are just leftover dinosaurs.
Yeah, but I don't think they have alligators in California, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Kevin Fly, lee side thermals. So what is the difference between a thermal that's on the front side where the wind is blowing up and the back side where the wind is maybe going over and causing problems? And you might actually get a thermal that will get sucked towards that wind that's making its way up, right? So it will feel and model this. It will be just like you're thinking, especially if you're standing in the lee side of the mountain. You might actually think that the wind is coming up the face, but in fact, you're in the lee. And as soon as you launch, you're going to get rotored and beat up. Okay. So lee side thermals, they might be protected and give this appearance like it's leaning this direction or that direction. But the fact is, you have to know what the prevailing wind is. So what is the prevailing wind? That's the majority of the direction of the wind at altitude. I've had situations where I've launched, the wind was directly going west at 10 miles an hour. At 6,000 feet, the direction of the wind was exactly east. And that created what's called shear. And then all of a sudden, you've got all kinds of weird stuff happening all at the same time. Top of lift, the shear, the wind, the thermals, everything mixed together turns into total chaos. Okay, now what's important to understand about lee side thermals compared to the regular thermals that you're going to deal with on the front of the range or flat land? Lee side thermals are going to be telling lies. You're going to think that this thermal is going to bring you into happiness, and it may bring you into this other thermal that's on the coming up the front. It may eventually meet it, but and this is all. I'm still very green when it comes to lee side flying because I'm just not really interested in it. It's terrifying to me. It happens every once in a while at Blossom. I'll cross because I'm giddy and got 3,000 feet and think, oh yeah, I'm just going to go over there, but it's north or it's got a little bit of wrong direction on it. It's wonky and weird, especially at the top of lift. So be careful. Will Fly donated $5 to Super Chat. He said, Resurgence PPG rocks. Thanks, Will Fly. Appreciate your consistency. So lee side thermals are they're kind of a mystery, and I know why Kevin wants to talk about it because he's fascinated with free flying. Tori Pope, what's a good beginner free flight wing? I would say I'm a kind of partial to ozone stuff, and so I really like the Rush, especially if you're coming from paramotoring world. The Rush is kind of a good solid, not a wing, but it also has enough characteristics that you could throw that in the bag and go on a flying adventure. And yeah, it's a cool thing. Oh, Nick Webster, he said, I hope it has enough stamps to send it to New Zealand. I got you, Nick. Whatever you need, man. You let me know if you want. If you don't paramotor, if you're a free flight guy, I'll send you something else. But that little cup that holds the micro SD cards for your videos, pretty clutch. Neat little deal. So yeah, I think I agree with Kevin Fly said a buzz or a rush. There's a whole new genre of these wings with ozone, and John Rip, he's got some really good feedback on gliders these days, and now he's got actually he's got a really good head on his shoulder for especially paramotor wings, but also we've been talking quite a bit about free flying wings because he's been starting to free fly quite a bit. You're welcome to jump in at any time, Rip, if you've got some wings
So
that you
another
think are
good
great.
V wing, the Gin Explorer 2, Santa Croce, he's been raving that wing. He's been selling it to everybody. That's also another good, first glider.
Yeah, I
I'd
love
say
the B
I'd say anything
category.
with like a B. Yeah, a B category would be just right because you have forward speed to be able to penetrate wind. You're not going to be the fastest guy, and you're going to probably be on one of the safer gliders that you could use.
For sure.
There's nothing like sitting and para parking. The wind's blowing just hard enough. You're not moving forward. You're not going anywhere, and you're just sitting still. That, I mean, you're looking down, and your foot's in the same spot that it's been. Sometimes that could be all right, but generally, that's not what you're aiming for.
Yeah, I like the idea of supporting your instructor. So if you've got, a place that you're getting regular training from, talk to them, obviously get some feedback about what they're recommending, because everyone's going to be passionate about what they're selling and what they want to sell or whatever. What some people are pushed for a certain brand and you're like, hey, I really like this brand and I like that brand, whatever. Outside of brand sensitivity, I'm just a free flight guy. I'm not sold to any glider. I really like Ozone stuff. And there's a few reasons why I think Ozone is kind of cutting edge, and they're able to kind of monopolize with what's happening. And they also, they're able to charge a little more because they've got some of the best of the best. But yeah, that's a great question, Tori. And I appreciate you asking that. So we talked about Lisa, we talked about low saves. Let's maybe talk about some of the weather models and what you're gonna choose to look. Now I'm gonna do just a quick screen share because this is kind of a daily routine. You look for a time, or you look for a certain weather forecast. It's something that it's like, I need to see this before I fly. Some of you might just have one weather thing that you look at, and it might just be the weather, that the app that comes with the phone, which is totally fine. You're like, all I do is look, is it going to rain or not? If it's not going to rain, I'm going to try to go fly. Or you might just have your wind forecast, and it's like, I'm just looking to make sure that it's not blowing over 15. Doesn't matter what direction, I'm just going to go for it. Let me see if I can screen share here. Bada boom, bada bing. Now, don't be overwhelmed by this. I'll start off by just showing the surface. This is our, what we call this, the terrain. So now, this is our local spot, El Capitan. Although it's not the real California El Cap. It's our little miniature one compared to the one. We launched from over here, this side of the El Monte Valley, and typically you'll have good lift up here. You can see that the top of the mountain, the very peak, is actually 3,647 feet. The face of this, the face of El Cap, kind of where you're seeing me fly on most regular basis, about 2,800 feet. There's a few things to think about when you decide that you're going to go fly. Obviously, wind direction is going to be important. So what wind direction do you think would be best? Well, I know what works best here is a southwest direction. So let's turn on the wind now. We're going to just check what that looks like. So now I've chosen top of usable lift, and now we're going to get wind direction. So tonight would have been perfect. So it's a 6 mile an hour wind, and it's perfectly southwest. And that wind speed is fine for me, and I would have been happy to fly in that. So now we know that at 2,000 feet, the wind direction is a little bit more south, and 4,000 feet, which is kind of the top, is almost dead. So that's almost nothing. If you're looking at these little barbs, obviously they're telling you that they're pointing kind of like an arrow if you were shooting an arrow. Now the little feathers that you see on the back are going to tell you the wind speed. So when it's a little half bar, that means that it is about 5 miles an hour. When you have a full bar, that's 10 miles an hour. And oh, that worked out perfect. That's exactly what it is. And then obviously, as you climb in altitude, you're going to have, now we got a barb and a half. So that's 16-mile-an-hour winds. And it goes on. So 2 barbs, 20, and then a half, so 24. So you can see what's happening at altitude. So if you climb up to 14,000, it's getting windier and windier. That's 3 bars. That's 30 miles an hour. You wouldn't think it was blowing 30 miles an hour at 14,000 feet by just looking up in the air, but there's stuff happening up there. So when I'm predicting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my time. And this is XC Skies. It does require a membership, and I think it's $40 a year. So pretty cheap. You definitely spend more than that on coffee in the year. So it's worth the investment if you're going to do some free flying. Now, also, if you're going to be doing some cross country flying, you're going to want to use this because it's going to help you to choose some of your routes. And then also you're going to want to pair this up with sectional charts and make sure that you're not going to be flying into airspace. So now we're going to choose our line based on wind direction and a few other things. So let's talk about the wind velocity and updrafts. So you got lift above ground. Now, what I typically look at, I'll go I will look at my top of usable lift. This is typically going to tell you how high you're going to be able to take a thermal before you're going to leave and try to go to another thermal. So the grays are all telling me I'm going to be at about 2,000 feet. The blue, that light blue, is 3,000. So that's predicting that I'm going to get that high. Now, if you look carefully, when I take the eye away, you can pretty much guarantee that the heights are only because that's how high the mountain is. So your lift from thermals is not really going to be there way out here. Because look, you can see this area right here is 2,500.
Well, so it tends to follow the terrain, correct?
It does kind of.
Not always, but
yeah,
generally.
You can see this big gap right here, right? The big gully. And then if you look, it kind of models that, right? So that on the outsides is 3,000, in the middle it's 2,000. And it does happen. But what I'm looking for, let's go back to like 12 o'clock noon and do the same thing. Now I'm going to look in the same exact area. You're going to notice that the top of usable lift is way higher. Top of usable lift today was 6,000, maybe 5,000, right? And so it was a really good day to fly. I should have called in. Can't come to work today. And I should have went and flew today. But you can see that, I mean, there was some really big skies over here. Well, not really big, but for the day, I mean, we're post frontal, and look at the altitudes here. We're 9,000. When you start seeing the yellows, man, that's when you get excited. So during the summer, you're going to see yellows all the time out here. This site down here is where we fly. It's called Horse. And so tonight or today would have been a really good day to fly Horse. The wind direction, wind speed is perfect. Top of usable lift. Let's go top. And you can see that the wind directions were good. Yeah, it was probably just a really prime day to fly. I'm actually kind of bummed that I'm looking at this right now. If I would have looked ahead of time, it would have been hard to go to work today. So yeah, you can see this wind direction. Now I'll zoom in on horse just for fun, and then we'll take the eye off. You can see this is the LZ down here. Oh, might be a little too much. Computer can't handle it. Well, anyways, it's really fun to kind of go and predict what's going to happen. So these are my go-tos. And then obviously you're going to look at a few other things. If you're kind of a scared pilot, one of the things I like to look at is the moisture level. So I want to see what my humidity looks like. And then also you can look at what the clouds are going to do, cloud cover and cloud depth. That's a fun one to look at. So if you're worried about overdevelopment, you can check that. And we can just zoom out here and see if there's anything poking out. No, just kind of patches here and there. Want to make sure there's no precipitation. I don't want to get caught in the rain. And then we have our humidity. So something that you can note about the higher humidity days is that and typically it's going to be higher humidity post-frontal days, which are the best days to fly. The higher humidity is going to make it for smoother flying, smoother thermals. And for whatever reason, it makes it nicer. And so whenever there's a little bit of humidity, I'm grateful. When it's high pressure and low humidity, you're going for a ride. It seems like the thermals are very sharp. So when you find it, it's like half of your wing will be in it and it'll be yanking you up by half of your wing. What's that, Sean?
Punchy, like a kidney buster, it's just bam. You're like, whoa, yeah.
Yep. It'll be punchy. It'll be unpredictable. You don't necessarily get bubbles. You just get these like air cactuses, they just scare you and they're not very comfortable, not very nice. You can't give them a hug. And so you have these times where you're going to go and check this and say, what's my humidity look like? Well, today would have been a great day because it was humidity. And that was also marking the top of the thermal. There was enough humidity because the dew point was meeting the temperature at altitude. And then it was kind of showing you. And then we have what's called cloud streets. So obviously you stay in the game long enough, you're going to find these cloud streets and you're going to see them. And it's always going to happen when you're at work or when you're driving. You might be on a trip and you're going to see these long rows of clouds. And especially when they're low, when you're checking your altitudes and you're predicting what's going to happen that day, you'll see different layers of clouds. The lower level is the one that you're going to be able to free fly to. It just cracks me up. It never fails. I'll be on a trip or I'll be driving somewhere and I'll be looking, I'll be like, oh my gosh, look at that cloud street. And that just means literally that you can follow that thing and you can just fly underneath it and take it. Sometimes our mountain range will produce this really long, great, puffy cloud street. And you can entertain yourself flying many of miles.
Those are the best because you can go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and just keep going down. And it's like Lift City. It's a beautiful thing. If you've never experienced that, definitely check that out.
Yeah, I'm really interested in making the trip to Palm Springs. It's like a 100-mile flight. It just looks amazing. And so many guys have done it. I haven't done it yet. The retrieve is kind of far. It's like a 2-hour drive, depending on traffic and stuff and what day you did it, but it looks amazing. Want to mention something, maxacro.com. If you want to sign up for an SIV, maxacro.com is the website. Max Marion is the teacher of the school. And then also now he's able to give tandem certification and instructor ratings. So if you want to sign up with him, maxacro.com, jump on one of his SIV tours or SIV clinics. He does a bunch of them here in Southern California, but he also does one in Turkey. And I think he's doing one in like Guatemala or something like that. Super cool. And one of the sponsors of the show. So support them if you can. Also, the show is brought to you by Resurgence PBG. So if you're interested in supporting our men and women of uniform, you can make a tax-deductible donation to resurgencepbg.com. When you donate, you're sponsoring those who put their lives on the line for your freedom. You can reach out to Todd Scandrett at resurgencepbg.com. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I wanted to just break off real quick and make sure there was no other questions. Let me just get my screen back to normal here. Bada boom,
Walter
bada
wants to know
bing.
what app you were using to see the altitude, wind
Yeah, it's
speed.
called XC Skies. xcskies.com. I guess I could drop that link. Can't get my screen to come back. I can't see what's going on here. Let's try that. Nope. Won't do it. Well.
Well, we could always create drama and controversy on the internet. Let me guess, it's an apple.
Here's a shot of Blossom Valley and El Cap.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good picture.
That's what you got to look
Yeah.
forward. So that's looking east, northeast, kind of east. There's the Cap. Robert starts from over here and fly.
Mhm.
How high do you have to get up before you want to cross?
2,800. So if you're the same height as that, the face of El Cap, you're safe. I'm talking for new guys.
Yeah.
Is that
you're,
attainable often, Robert?
Oh yeah, very often, especially in the summer. Yeah,
Can't
even
wait.
from now until summer, it'll be good.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So when you decide you're going to go, you want to have it very minimum 2,400 feet above sea level, and the launch is 1,500 feet. The crossing is, I think it's less than a mile to cross, and you lose depending on the day, you'll lose a few hundred feet. If you really want to get some tips, whenever I'm flying, I'm usually talking to myself, and I'll record and try to communicate what I'm learning that day or whatever my plan is. And so you might be able to learn something about flying that site from some of the previous videos that I posted on there. But yeah, any other questions? Walter asked, what app are you on? Yeah, that's one. I also use another one on my phone. This might be while I'm in the air. I might pull this up every once in a while. I actually have a weather station that's on the top of El Cap. It's managed by the San Diego Hang Gliding and Paragliding Association. I can't really share it on my other screen, so I'll just have to hold my phone. But
That's pretty good, though. That'll let you know a lot of stuff.
oh yeah, it gives you tons of stuff, and you just need to spend a little time in the graphs, understanding what's happening. The green graph is showing me wind speed and inconsistency and different stuff. So that was showing me that the peak of the day was like 17 miles an hour, and that weather station's at about 3,000 feet. So it gives a pretty good indicator what's going on. It was mostly clouded out today, so you can see that little graph right there is just showing that there's a lot of clouds going on. And then this yellow one, I'm becoming more and more fascinated with this one. This is my barometric pressure, and it's really cool to follow that. When you have high pressure systems, it gets a little bit tricky. Low pressure systems coming through, seems like the thermals release more predictive. That's what we call post frontal. So we have a low front that comes through. Low fronts typically bring some rain, and right after that low front moves through, you have some really good flying conditions, and really enjoyable. Yeah, post frontal flying is the best. Anyways, we're going to go to the after show. Thank you so much, Rip. Appreciate you coming on. Sean, thanks for doing what you do. Anthony Peregringo, moderating the chat. Thank you guys for what you bring each week. We're going to go and hang out. If you want to check out some of the previous episodes, do that. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you're one of the sponsors, I greatly appreciate you. And also everybody who's in the chat, everybody who shows up every week. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate all the super chatters who contribute to keep the show going. We're gonna keep the giveaways rolling. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one. If I don't see you in the air, I'll see you on the air. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Peace.